Direction Barcelone maintenant et la chance d'entendre des professionnels discuter de la force des mains de départ, Theo Jorgensen, la championne EPT San Remo Liv Bory, le 2 fois champion LAPT Nacho Barbero et le seul unique Daniel Negreanu.
Well, like when I started playing, limit hold'em back in the day, everyone was so big on like starting hands. You can't play this in this position and all that, but I was much looser and much more aggressive and wilder, and like it was always my belief that real skill comes post-flop and starting hand requirements are kind of like overrated. I know you play, I'll point to you because I know you play on that. Do you believe that sometimes people spend far too much time worrying about like pre-flop starting hand requirements rather than situations?
Yeah, I think they do. You gotta raise in some spots, but at the beginning, I also believe that you gotta avoid some certain spots being a beginner. So it's like, don't be racing with like ace-10 under the gun.
Under the gun est une position à la table, le premier à agir. Nous verrons ça dans le prochain épisode.
Weak aces are like hands that are gonna get you in trouble later on.
Feels like the better you are as a player, and I always give this advice, the better you are as a player, the more hands you can play. Simply, but there are, as you mentioned, like hands, like are there hands that you just find that, for example, for yourself, that you find, okay, when you're in a tournament or whatever the case may be, that you seem to be doing fine, and there's a certain type of hand that you're like, oh boy, this is dangerous, I could blow my whole stack here, so maybe you decide to throw it away or just play cautiously. Other types of hands that you would, and what are they? What kind of hands would you?
Especially hands like Nacho talked about, the
like ace-10s and...
Ace-10, even ace-jack, something like that when you're sitting there on the button. For an example, okay, and you raise and it's up against aggressive players, and you know there's a big chance you might get a re-raise here. And then you have to take a very, very difficult decision whether you have to go with this one or not.
Do you think there's a group of hands that are underrated?
Well, yeah, things like suited one-gappers.
Les joueurs de poker surnomment one-gapper des cartes comme 7 et 9 qui n'ont qu'un rang d'écart.
Two-gappers even.
Like 7-9 of clubs and 6-8 of spades, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I actually really like 9-10 suited. It makes you so much money on the long term that, I mean.
That, I agree, like we talk about trouble hands, you mentioned ace-10 offsuit, right? That's a hand where, in a position, it's not something you want to play, but a hand like 9-10 suited, completely different. Now, if you look at the two hands side by side and run it hot and cold, ace-10 is way better than 9-10 suited, but not when you factor in post-flop play. Whenever I teach someone, new, you basically teach them a very stringent, like, starting hands rules where you got to play tight, and you got to play aggressive when you do, and you're going to get exploited because people are going to know that and they're going to pick up on it. But if you're new to the game, it's really the best approach. If you just get in there and start gambling like the pros do, you're going to get outplayed left, right, and center.